Ford Edge, renewed for the first time, but with one old thing we don't like. The future of the turbocharger is electric and why you care, and how to spot a car that's been for a swim. It's time to check the tech. We see cars differently. Nice. We love them on the road and under the hood, but also check the tech and are known for telling it like it is. Ugly is included at no extra cost. The good, the bad, the bottom line. This is CNET on Cars. Welcome to CNET on Cars, the show all about high-tech cars and modern driving. I'm Brian Cooley. One of the biggest auto sales stories of the year, 2015 in the U.S., has been the resurgence of the crossover. Americans are past the recession, we're past $100 a barrel oil, and we're past our guilt about driving SUVs. So Ford figures, pretty good time to redo the Edge, completely, for the first time since introduction. Let's drive the all-new 2015 and check the tech. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking we brought the wrong Edge. It looks a lot like the outgoing 14, certainly in its general shape and volumes and proportion, but the dead giveaway is right here. The 15 has this deeply sculpted side, where the past Edge had this kind of black slab side. The grille's a little different, the tail lights are very much like a Fusion, which is no coincidence, because the Edge is largely based on the platform shared with the Fusion. Overall, it's about an inch longer in 15. That's not dramatic by any stretch. Now, inside the new Edge, Ford's done a lot of work to bring it upscale and not be so utilitarian. Now, there's the real problem. It's the My Ford Touch with some sync technology that Ford took a drubbing for years. It's been replaced by Sync 3. Unfortunately, this 15 Edge only offers this outgoing My Ford Touch. The 16 will bring you the much more desirable Sync 3. You know what to do. Of course, the good part of Ford LCD interface is over there in front of the driver, where you've got those two helper screens alongside the Speedo, and those are configurable in almost any variety on the left, or change to whatever focus you care about of 4 choices on the right, and they've each got a dedicated wing controller on the wheel. That's some of Ford's best UI and HMI, even if this is kind of the opposite. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the controls down here. Everything here is now a physical button, and they're large and pretty well spaced, so this is well done human-machine interface. Here's something new. This camera button is going to turn on a front-looking cam. This is, I think, a first for Ford overall. It gives you that sort of going out forward look when you're sort of nudging out of a blind space. You can even go to a really extreme fisheye here. Our drive controls are pretty straightforward. A conventional automatic transmission, PRND-S in this case, but S isn't a complete cohesive sport mode, it's a sport profile. And accompanying this shifter are, of course, the almost common now paddles on the wheel. Only one choice, though, and that is this automatic. In the back of our Edge, we got an interesting numbers story going on. There's another inch of legroom, which is nice to have in a compact-ish crossover, and about another inch of shoulder room, roughly per 2 passengers back here. Here's the proof in the pudding. I set up this passenger seat for me up there, and now I'm able to sit behind me back here. That doesn't happen in a lot of cars. We've got inflatable seat belts in the back on this vehicle. I've also got a nice big panoramic roof up here that extends all the way back to the rear headrest. Now, some things have changed in the engine bay on the new Edge, and some things haven't. First of all, this is now the standard engine, the 2-liter, the little guy, inline-4, sitting side saddle with EcoBoost technology. That means a turbocharger and direct injection. It used to be kind of a pricey option. Now it's the base engine. It's also now got a twin-scroll turbo, so a turbo that has 2 modes of operation to be more responsive. Additional engines include the 3.5-liter V6 and the 2.7-liter 4-cylinder EcoBoost, but here's your new base. The numbers are up a little bit. It's now 245 horsepower, up 5, and 275 pound-feet of torque, also up 5. What didn't change is the MPG. It still comes in at 24 average, which is 20 city, 30 highway. The last Edge was 21 city, 30 highway, but the average comes out the same. All of this goes out through a 6-speed automatic transmission. We have front-wheel drive. You can also get these guys in all-wheel drive. And by the way, all it wants is regular gas. first thing that struck me about the new Edge is the ride quality. This is smooth and nice and liquid, very compliant. I like that, and I think it's a home run for the market they're going after. Now, the next thing you notice is the powertrain. You say, okay, how's this little 2-liter EcoBoost turbo doing? Well, it actually does fine as long as you don't let it get buried under car. In other words, don't find it loafing along in sixth when you need to stab at the power. And so drop it in sport mode, for example, get on those paddles, and keep things cooking. Some interesting driver assists on this car. One that is not terribly cutting edge is lane departure warning and lane departure prevention. Because it has an electric power steering rack, they can address that digitally and tell it to nose you back in. That's how they do it. Perhaps the most interesting, though, is this new layer of self-parking technology. Now this vehicle adds perpendicular on top of that, and also exit mode. So if you're too damn dumb to get out of a parking spot you parked in, don't know how that works, this will get you out of it. That front camera is, it's useful if you're coming out of a blind spot. You gotta hit that button, of course. You gotta think about it manually, but it's got a good clear image. And there are also quite an elaborate array of surround sensors that are available on this vehicle to augment the front and rear cameras. You have no surround camera tech, however. You get a lot of segments there on the screen, as you can see, along with various beeps and color coding to let you know what you're about to scrape. And coming later, not available now as I understand it, but in mid-model year production will be adaptive cruise and the forward collision automatic braking.
Okay, let's do up a 15 Ford Edge CNET style. Starts off at $36,500 because that's the price of admission for this titanium trim with front-wheel drive. And this is a preloaded vehicle, but then we check the box for package 302A. Ford's just got away with names, don't they? That brings you a lot of toys. The power liftgate, you can wag your foot to open. The panoramic roof overhead, that new active parking assist, the front camera, HID headlights, blind spot warning, the lane departure and prevention I showed you on the road, voice-based navigation, and those rear seat belts with airbags built in. Now, $1,300 more brings you the driver assist package, which goes further with adaptive cruise control, as well as forward collision mitigation braking that's automatic, and for some reason they lump in a tilt telescope wheel with that. And my favorite option is dealer installed, $330 for a safe in the console. What are you going to put in there? You're driving an Edge, you're not James Bond. I'd get one too. Anyway, we're looking about $43,800 all in for this guy. Here's your bottom line on the Edge. Looks a lot better, I think, but still very familiar. More room in the back seat, always a good thing. That technology in the dash, that's sad. You gotta wait till 2016, I'm afraid. And the 2-liter EcoBoost turbo engine is now standard. Used to be a rather pricey option. Find the full review of the 15 Ford Edge, a titanium trim in our case, over at cars.cnet.com. Well, a flooded car, whether it was a long time ago or it's still drying out, is basically a nightmare. You want to run the other way. The smarter driver knows that, but not everyone knows how to spot one. And we'll show you how when CNET on Cars returns. Well, here near the On Cars headquarters in Northern California, we don't even know what rain looks like anymore. But many of you have been getting plenty of it. And torrential floods. So the idea of being wary about a flooded car is still very relevant, except for us. The problem with a flooded car is that you never really dry it out, at least not in terms of the effect of water getting into orifices and systems that were never supposed to see water. And that water is often salty. That raises hell with metal corrosion and damage to electronics and wiring. A reputable car dealer should not be selling a flooded car without clearly disclosing that. A private party seller has, shall we say, more leeway to forget or claim they didn't know. So here are some tips and tricks you can use to find out if the car you're looking at never took the big dip. Now, when you get into a car that you're considering buying and wondering about flood damage, just give it a sniff. You can't mistake that mildew smell, and it's almost impossible to get out of a vehicle when it's been flooded. Now, it's possible to get a little mildew odor because you had clogged drain tubes up in the sunroof or in the well of a convertible, but assume the worst and go hunting. Second, look, and I don't mean just at the floor mat or under the floor mat. If you can, try and get a peek under the carpet.
That's the harder part to conceal when there was once flood damage. It can be tough. A lot of modern cars really seal these carpets down, but give it a look. You might find some place to get under there. And third, feel. Feel around up above the glove box, inside that little well, down in the seat tracks and rails as well. What you're looking for is little traces of mud that might get on your hands. I mean, how else would it get up there, certainly at this height? Now, there are two sites you can check to get a car's flood history. The National Motor Vehicle Title Information System is a federal database that includes flood information. Now, only about 35 states fully report into it. The rest either don't or don't fully. That opens loopholes for title washing. That's when a car passes through the DMV of a state that doesn't fully report the nature of a flooded car. Flags like water damage, total loss, or salvage title then drop off the car's history. Also, check the National Insurance Crime Bureau site. It's run by the insurance industry. They report in all cases where claims have been attached to a car that was flooded or some other way totaled. Both are free to check, and both, as you can see, will have some holes in their data. It pays to double check the databases that are out there, as well as your own senses and your gut, to make sure you're not plunking down good money for a car that got irrecoverably wet. Welcome back to CNET on Cars, coming to you from our home at the Mount Tam Motor Club, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, whenever you see a review or video about a car with a turbocharger, you're going to hear the phrase turbo lag, how little or how much the car has. It's not a good thing. It's the Achilles heel of an otherwise great technology. But what if that Achilles heel got erased? Electric turbochargers seek to do exactly that, and they make for a historic and imminently happening Car Tech 101. First of all, if you're unclear on turbos, check out our Car Tech 101 on them, back from episode 2, and our Turbos versus Superchargers episode 15 segment. But I can save you some trouble. We can do a quick refresher on turbos right here with this Ford EcoBoost 4-cylinder. Now, this is the turbo apparatus. This part picks up the exhaust gas coming out of the engine, and it starts to spin a shaft. On the other end of that is a compressor. That takes air and rams more of it into the cylinders than the environment would do naturally. And that's how you get more power out of the engine, because more fuel, more power. But there are three hang-ups to this kind of design. First of all, since it's run by exhaust, which is a gas and a compressible gas, there's a whole lot of lag when you step on the gas pedal before you get the full effect of it. Secondly, you've got an issue of size and placement. I mean, you've got one spool here, another spool here, and a lot of plumbing. That means this thing's fairly big. Because it lives and runs off the exhaust, it has to live at the exhaust manifold, more or less. That takes away some flexibility for engine designers who would like to put it somewhere else. And thirdly, since the turbo sits in the middle of the exhaust stream, it gets in the way of scavenging exhaust gases. And that means the engine breathes less well. That's not good for power or efficiency. The electric turbo seeks to answer all three of those limitations. Major supplier Vallejo has an electric turbo, which they happen to call an electric supercharger. It's powered by 48 volts DC, 4 times what your car has now. This is a new thing, but we covered it recently in our episode 63, Car Tech 101, if you want to brush up. Now, once you have 48 volts, this turbo can be mounted almost anywhere, typically close to the intake of the engine, for the shortest run to push the boosted air, and of course not sitting in the exhaust path. Or it can be used to pre-boost a traditional turbo, so it works better. That's part of why Vallejo claims this can increase MPG on a car by at least 10% and maybe over 15%. To conquer turbo lag, their electric booster always idles at around 10,000 RPM, spooling up to a max of 70,000 to deliver full boost at almost the moment you demand it via the pedal. Audi's been testing it, and Vallejo says that company will put it into a production car in 2016. Honeywell and Continental are two other big industry suppliers who plan to have electric turbos on the market and in production cars perhaps a year or two after Vallejo. Taking a slightly different tack is major turbo maker Borg-Warner with what they call an e-booster. It's a small electric air pump that additionally boosts what a conventional turbo is shoving into the engine, either by being mounted before or after the turbo itself. The e-booster is always a helper, not a primary turbo. The fuel economy and emissions targets that are coming in the EU and US alone uncover enough new cars each year to demand new ways of managing engine efficiency, opening the door for electric turbos, especially in smaller engines that demand more nuanced, flexible boosting technologies. In a moment, how much wheel is too much wheel? And the top 5 cars you'll be glad you bought down the road when CNET on Cars returns.
The new Ford GT is going to be powered by a 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine. That engine is going to produce over 600 horsepower. Well, it means a lot to Ford going back to Le Mans. I mean, 50 years of heritage is going to be celebrated next year. You know, a lot of people want to know who we're gunning for and what we're doing. We're going to show up with one hell of a race car, and I hope Ferrari's ready as well.
Find more from the XCar team of CNET UK at cnet.com/XCar. Welcome back to CNET on Cars. I'm Brian Cooley. Here's the part of the show where I take one of your emails. This time, it's coming in from Keith B., writing in from the Philippines. And he says, I've got a Honda City, a car you might not recognize, but very popular here in Southeast Asia. I know the car. It's a little smaller than a Civic, a little bigger than a Honda Fit. I was thinking of changing my rims, he writes, from 15-inch to 19-inch. His question is, what are the pros and cons of larger rims on a car? Well, Keith, first of all, you're not just getting larger, you're really going to town. 15 to 19 is like night and day. Your car is going to look really different, but more importantly, it may feel different in a handful of ways. Here's what I want you to think about. First of all is ride quality. There could be an additional harshness, in fact, almost certainly, when you go from a 15 with a very thick, high-profile tire to a 19 with a very thin, low-profile tire. A lot more road input's going to work its way into your cabin. Then you want to make sure you're going to have good clearance on your new tires and wheels. They won't just be bigger in diameter, they're also necessarily going to get wider. There's a lot more mass moving in that wheel well. Make sure it's not scraping or rubbing, either when the car's empty, fully laden, going straight, or making a U-turn. Next up, make sure the overall circumference of your new tire wheel package is basically the same as your old tire wheel package. That's the overall diameter. This is important to make sure your speedometer still reads correctly, but more importantly, that your ABS technology knows what it's dealing with out there with the wheels that it's trying to control slip and spin on. Now think about your power steering as well. When you get a bigger wheel, you also get a wider wheel, and that means a bigger contact patch of rubber on the road. That has more resistance to being turned. So your power steering rack, the apparatus in the car, is going to have to work harder. You may not feel it at the wheel because it takes care of the extra sweat, but just know you might be wearing things out faster. And finally, know that your acceleration and fuel economy could suffer a little bit because you're adding a lot more rotating metal weight that the car has to spin up and brake all the time. It's not going to be a big deal, I don't think, but you may feel it. Overall, the jump you're trying to make from basically 15-inch donuts to 19s that could make your car look like a donk is kind of drastic. I might measure that back a little and just go with 17s maybe. Now, I get a lot of questions from you via email about buying a new car, the cars you're looking at, what's a good value, what's a good car. But I almost never get questions about those cars' resale value, and I should. It's a huge factor as to whether or not you're getting a good deal when you buy a car, but it's typically out of mind because it often doesn't affect you till the end of life cycle, when you go to sell the car or when you go to trade it in. But think about it up front. It's a big part of whether you did a good deal or not. Meanwhile, to inspire you, here's a top 5 list of new 2015 vehicles in the U.S. market that hang on to their resale value really well. Now, I'm taking out pickup trucks here because they're just a different market in many ways, and often company trucks. And frankly, if I didn't, they would dominate the top 5. So these are 2015 cars and SUVs ranked by the definitive projection, that of Kelley Blue Book, KBB. It's the residual value they compute 5 years after first sale. Let's go. Number 5 is the Subaru WRX, 49.4% left after 5 years. The WRX has a cult following. I mean, can you imagine one being sold on the used market to someone who's ambivalent about it? You buy a WRX because you love WRXs, and that does wonders for your residuals. You're selling a religion, not just a car. Number 4, the Chevy Corvette, 49.5% residual. The new Vette is an amazing bargain to begin with for its degree of performance, and that does wonders for its long-term value. Being a two-seat car, though, does limit its market options. The only other one in 58 cars surveyed is the Porsche Cayman, and it came in 7 points lower. Number 3, the 2015 Honda CR-V, 50.8%. Here we have now crossed that 50% margin, a nice psychological place to be after a handful of years. The CR-V is the best-selling compact crossover in the U.S., and some part of that would certainly be buyers knowing that they're going to have such a nice residual down the road. Number 2, the Toyota 4Runner, 54.3% residual value. What do you have to say about this guy? It's a classic in a rugged way that you feel is going to last forever. Before I get you to number 1, the 5 worst cars for resale value after 5 years, along with their miserable numbers. The Audi A5 and Audi A7, virtually the same. Audi comes in back-to-back on the list. It's just the wrong list. Then you've got the Toyota Avalon at 36.2, Chevy Impala, and then the king of the stinkers, the Mercedes S-Class, a mere 33.5% residual value after 5 years. If you have one of these and didn't either lease it with company money or have us U.S. taxpayers subsidizing it, you're an idiot. By the way, the best overall brand for value retention is Subaru. Think about it. They're built tough, they're capable, they've got very clear attributes, few gimmicks, and also have a cult following like the WRX within the brand. That's marketing 101 on wheels. The number 1 vehicles for residual after 5 years are the Jeep Wrangler and Wrangler Unlimited. These are the real Jeeps to many people. They're SUVs that combine a low price with serious off-road cred, and in the case of the Unlimited, there's plenty of room to bring a couple of city slickers along on your rock-crawling exploits. And being an American icon doesn't hurt either. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Wherever you watch us, keep an eye out for either a channel or a subscription link so it's easier than ever to get our shows every 2 weeks. And keep those emails coming. It's oncars@cnet.com. I'll see you next time we check the tech.